Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to start a new chapter of corporate accounting, that is redemption of preference shares. So let's move to next slide. So let us first understand what is preference share. मैं आपको प्रेफरेंस शेयर का कोई डेफिनेशन नहीं दूंगी, rather I will explain you what is preference share through its features. So the first thing is that प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स को फिक्स डिविडेंड मिलता है. That is, preference share will get fixed rate of dividend like 6% preference share, 7% preference share, 8% preference shares and so on. The second thing about preference share is that preference share holders के पास कुछ preferential rights होते हैं over equity shareholders, like with regard to distribution of dividend. डिविडेंड जब कंपनी डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करते हैं, फर्स्ट इट गिव टू प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स एंड देन टू इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर्स. तो डिविडेंड पहले प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स को दिया जाता है, फिर इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर्स को दिया जाता है. अगेन इफ वी सी इन केस ऑफ वाइंड अप ऑफ द कंपनी, द कैपिटल, द पेमेंट ऑफ कैपिटल इज फर्स्ट डन टू प्रेफरेंस शेयर and then to equity shares. So in this regard, preference shareholders have priority over equity shares. But the downside of preference share is that उनके पास कोई voting rights नहीं होता है. That is, they have no voting rights in the company. This is the thing about preference share. I hope it is clear now what is preference share. The core of this chapter, redemption of preference shares. So let us first understand what is redemption. Redemption means paying back the amount of preference capital to preference shareholders. It is just opposite of issue of shares. Let us see how. जब company shares issue करती है, then it gives shares to the preference shareholders and in return preference shareholders pay money to the company. But in case of redemption, the preference share return the shares to the company and the company pay back the money to the preference shareholders. So this is redemption. This is called redemption of preference shares. Now it is clear that the process of repayment means redemption. Company जब share issue करती है, company gets the money and then the company redeem the shares, the company pay back the money to the preference shareholders. So the amount at which the shares will be redeemed are decided beforehand or are decided in advance. At the time of issue of shares, it is decided, it is pre-decided at what amount the shares will be redeemed on the maturity date. For example, issue of shares for rupees 100 and it is redeemable for rupees 110. So it is decided advance, that is called prearranged amount. Again, the maturity date, that is the date on which the shares will be redeemed, are also decided beforehand. That is called prearranged time. Now let us decide how we do redemption in accounting. So let us go to section 55 of the Indian Companies Act 2013, which have laid down certain provisions with regard to redemption of preference shares. So let us go to section 55. So section 55 talks about the redemption of preference shares. So let us go to section 55 and understand what this section talks about redemption of preference shares. Let us go one by one. Only fully paid shares can be redeemed. That means the shares which are fully paid, only those shares can be redeemed. If a shares are partly paid, it cannot be redeemed. But if in question, if it is given that partly paid shares, then first we have to make the final call and then assume that all the money have been received and then we have to simply pass in general entry. The second thing is that how preference share can be redeemed. जब हम प्रेफरेंस शेयर रिडीम्ड करते हैं, we need money. The company need money to repay the preference shareholders. अब कंपनी कहाँ से पैसे लेके आएगी प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स को रिपे करने के लिए? So there are two ways. So there are two methods. That is, one of the method for redemption of preference share is to use the proceeds of a fresh issue of shares. A company can issue new shares, equity share or preference share, and the proceeds from such shares can be used for redemption of preference shares. That is, company will get money to repay the preference shareholders. That is how नए शेयर्स इशू करके जब कंपनी न्यू शेयर्स इशू करती है, then company gets money, and those money the company can use to redeem the preference shares. Only the company can redeem the nominal value of the shares by proceeds of fresh issue of shares. This is the first way. The second way is that the company can use their profit. The company can use their divisible profit. The profit which the company have earned in the past and which are in the free reserves. Free reserves means वो profit जो company के पास है and the company use it as a or to pay the dividend or for the distribution of dividend. The company can do anything with this free reserves. Free reserves are not capital reserve or specific reserve, because free reserve is the only reserve जो कंपनी अपना डिविडेंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करने के लिए यूज करता है. Free reserves only can be used to redeem the preference shares. So there are two ways: out of proceeds of fresh issue of shares or out of divisible profit, free reserves of the company. Or third thing, how the company can redeem the preference share is nothing but a combination of both. That is, they can redeem whole amount by fresh issue of shares or whole amount by divisible profit, or some part of for the redemption of preference share they can get the money out of proceeds of fresh issue of shares and some part out of divisible profits. Now, if in a question is given that the investments are sold, lands are sold, machineries are sold to redeem the preference shares, how it is possible then? See, जब company profit earn करती है, then they don't keep that profit idle in the company. Rather, वो उस profit को कहीं ना कहीं invest करती है. Like they make some investments, they invest in land, they also make investment in machineries and other assets. So now when the company need money to repay the preference shareholders, the company will sold these assets, the company will sold its investment and get the profit back, and through this profit they will pay back or they will pay off the preference shareholders. So there are only two ways preference share can be redeemed. Number one, out of proceeds of fresh issue of shares, only nominal value of the shares can be redeemed out of proceeds of fresh issue of shares. Number B, or out of divisible profits, that is free reserves of the company, or combination of both. So there are only two ways to redeem the preference shares. For the redemption of preference shares, the money can be raised by only two ways. Third thing is premium paid on redemption. Before discussion, let me explain what is premium. Premium is nothing but the extra payment made for redemption. The extra payment made for redemption is premium. When we issue preference shares and when we redeemed it at extra amount, those extra amount is premium. For example, preference share issue at ₹100 and is redeemed for ₹105, or an or is redeemed at rupees 110, those rupees 5 or those rupees 10 is premium. Now when the shares are issued at face value, it is mentioned at that time the amount of premium at which the shares are going to be redeemed. And here the section is talking about how the company is going to bring money for premium amount or extra amount. प्रीमियम पे करने के लिए कंपनी एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट कहां से लेके आएगी? How they will bring this premium amount? So there has been amendment in this provision. See, here the section says there are two types of company. So section 133 applies to every company which have an objective of earning profit, and they also need to follow the accounting standard. So the section 133 applies to every company whoever earns or whoever have the objective of earning profit. So in that case, they can use only profits to pay the premium on redemption, and they cannot use security premium. But before this amendment, the company can use both profits as well as security premiums. Still, in some of the institution or universities, it is not updated. They still use both profit as well as security premium. But after amendment, the company to which the section 133 applies, they can only use profits, not security premium. The second type of company is where the section 133 doesn't apply, where it does not follow accounting standards. So the company to whom the section 133 doesn't apply do not follow accounting standards. In that case, they can use both profits as well as security premium. They can use both profit as well as security premium to pay premium on redemption. I hope it is clear now. Let's move to next topic. The fourth thing is after redemption of preference shares. After redemption of preference shares, total capital should be same or total capital should remain intact. Now what does it mean? And we know that it is one of the important provision of section 55 that after redemption of preference shares, total capital same रहना चाहिए. Total capital should remain intact. And here total capital refers to, what is total capital? Here total capital refers to equity shares plus preference shares. Equity shares and preference shares represents total capital. But how it is possible? How total profit is going to be same? If we are repaying the preference shareholders, अगर हम preference shareholder को repay कर देते हैं, तो total capital same कैसे हो सकता है? How it is possible and how we can make the capital same after redemption of preference shares? Then in the balance sheet, we will not see preference share capital. We will see in the balance sheet only equity shares after payment of preference shares. So how it is possible? Now after redemption of preference shares, amount equivalent to redemption of preference shares can be raised by fresh issue of equity shares. How it is possible to keep the capital intact after redemption of preference shares? The one way is the fresh issue of equity shares equivalent to preference share redeemed. जितना का preference share redeemed हुआ है उतना का हम new equity shares issue कर देंगे या कंपनी new equity share issue कर लेगा, जिससे कि कंपनी का capital will remain same. And the other ways, capital जितना का preference share redeemed किया है, equivalent to that amount, the company will transfer from profit to CRR. From profit, here profit referred to free reserves like profit and loss, general reserve, dividend equalization reserve. उतना का मतलब जितना का उसने मैंने कंपनी शेयर रिडीम्ड कर रहे हैं उतना का प्रॉफिट द कंपनी विल ट्रांसफर टू CRR. नाउ व्हाट इज CRR? CRR stand for capital redemption reserve. Capital redemption reserve. And capital redemption reserve which will ultimately converted into share capital by issue of bonus shares. This capital redemption reserve is used to issue bonus shares. So if a company redeemed 100 rupees या 100 preference shares, those 100 preference shares the company will get back या कंपनी इसको वापस बैलेंस कर लेगी. कैसे? by fresh issue of equity shares or by transferring the divisible profit to capital redemption reserve which is ultimately used to issue bonus shares. So again the capital will become intact. So the total capital will remain same after redemption of preference shares. Now for example, suppose the company is having 100 equity shares and 100 preference shares. तो total share capital company के पास है 200. अब कंपनी 100 रुपीज का प्रेफरेंस शेयर या 100 प्रेफरेंस शेयर्स कंपनी रिडीम्ड कर दिया या कंपनी हैव रिपे द प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स. तो अब कंपनी के पास कितना बचता है? 100 शेयर कैपिटल, दैट इज 100 इक्विटी शेयर्स एंड दे हैव 100 शेयर कैपिटल. बट अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस प्रोविजन टोटल कैपिटल शुड रिमेन सेम. So how this 100 preference share the capital will get? The company will get. Sorry, how the company will get? Company is 100 preference share को या तो fresh issue of equity shares के द्वारा लेके आएगा या फिर by transferring a divisible profit to capital redemption reserve which is ultimately used to issue bonus shares. So in this case the total capital will remain same. And in balance sheet it will be shown 200 share capital only. Thank you so much.